TIFU by poisoning myself for a week and canceling all holidays.
This has been ongoing for the past week. My wife and I have been planning a safe holiday get-together with the kids and our parents. My 2-year-old was supremely excited to see everyone and open presents. On the day of Christmas, however, I come down with a little stomach issue. Hoping it's nothing, but fearing Omicron has more gastrointestinal symptoms than Delta, we took it easy and postponed. The next day my symptoms are progressing. Every bite of breakfast my body feels like it is rejecting food. My chest is tight and it's hard to breathe. I have aches and fatigue. This is it, I think. This is how I die. I'm boosted, mind you. My wife is panicking because I'm panicking. I am unable to find any tests. This continues for days. My gastrointestinal issues worsening. At 1 or 2 points, I shit myself. Only a little. But still, I can't eat. I begin to feel better the next day. Take it easy. Oh man, the following day is worse. Back with a vengeance. As night rolls in, I start having chest palpitations. My heart skipping beats, speeding up, I am abounding with dizziness and faint. My chest feels so tight I can't breathe. I have my friend come pick me versus dragging my wife and 2 kids to the ER, and on the way there it subsides. I make a decision to go home. Maybe it's just anxiety. I'm so panicked I can't eat. I force water down. Today I feel okay, start to make breakfast for me and my son. As my wife walks over and points out something she never noticed on the cinnamon raisin bagels we got recently: sesame. I'm terribly allergic to sesame. I used to eat it all the time growing up, only to develop worsening allergies over the years. Beginning with irritable bowel syndrome, then progressing one night to full-on palpitations and fear I was about to have a heart attack. A blood test later determined sesame is the culprit. Signs of a bad reaction include heart palpitations, gastrointestinal issues, restricted breathing, and the impending fear of doom. I told the doctor, but I've never had a problem before. The doctor said the more I expose myself, the worse it will get. So I almost did have a heart attack. I unfortunately ate one today and am sitting at home anxious, tight chest, waiting for it to all pass through my system. TLDR, been poisoning myself with an allergy for the past week, almost killing myself, and disappointing my family and kids around the holidays for being COVID cautious.
TIFU by giving my grandma diabetes for Christmas.
This actually took place a couple of weeks ago, right before Christmas. This year has been rough on the old wallet due to medical bills, so this year I decided to make some treats to give out as Christmas gifts. First, a little backstory to help explain the situation. I have always been into cooking, baking, etc. My grandma has always been super supportive, and every new recipe I try I end up taking some to her for taste testing. I call it the grandma tax. Grandma usually ends up getting 2 to 3 things a week from me, usually, at least one sweet item or dessert included. For Christmas, I decided to make 3 different kinds of fudge, peanut brittle and some peppermint bark to give as gifts. I decided to make a test batch of all the fudges since I had never made them before. I let Grandma know what I was making and she was excited to try them. About a week before Christmas, I deliver a box full of sweets to dear old Grandma. Time passes and I give her a call on Christmas Eve to wish her happy holidays and all that, and to see how she liked my treats. She let me know she loved them and we get to chatting. During our chat, she mentioned that she had not been feeling well for a few days and had gone to see a doctor 2 days prior. Here is where I realized my FU. Unbeknownst to me, Grandma has been borderline diabetic for years. When she visited the doctor, they said her blood sugar had spiked recently, which pushed her over the edge, and she now had type 2 diabetes. Not only was my fudge the straw that broke the camel's back, but my weekly treats have more than likely been what has kept her pre-diabetic for so many years. Luckily, with a little diet and exercise, her blood sugar should drop low enough she won't have to take medication for it. Time to find some healthy recipes for Grandma. TLDR, years of sweet treats and a mountain of fudge right before Christmas gave Grandma diabetes just in time for the holidays. Fewer sweets and a little exercise and she should be fine.
TIFU dropping my husband's semen in the postbox and forgetting to pay.
Technically yesterday, it's 1 a.m. and I can't sleep giggling about it. My husband had a vasectomy a few months back. He had to provide a sample for the lab to check it was successful. The pot and envelope have been on the kitchen side for a while. Today, I arrive home to find it sealed and waiting for me by the front door. I crack some jokes and off I go to do my part. I drop it into the post box, take a photo and send it to him. Bye-bye sperm or lack of sperm, oh ho I'm so funny. Husband asks why I'm not at the post office. I shrugged it off. Only when I arrived home did I discover the envelope was not prepaid. It had to be sent on a Tuesday latest to ensure it arrives still good. So now, my husband's semen is on a mystery ride, with no postage paid. Probably circling around the postal system until it ends up abandoned in a pile somewhere of unpaid mail. I'm not sure if I can, or even how to retrieve it. Now my poor husband is probably going to need to provide another sample, and I doubt I'll be trusted to deliver the goods. TLDR, posted semen after a vasectomy for testing. Didn't pay postage. Have no idea where it will end up.
TIFU by telling my 7-year-old sister that COVID test swabs can get stuck in your nose.
My parents had gotten my younger sister a home COVID test due to her having similar symptoms as COVID. I was leaving my room to get something to drink as I walked past the living room telling my mother that did you know that the cotton part of the COVID test can actually get stuck up your nose? She looked at me angrily whilst my younger sister looked at me in total shock. I thought that my sister had already taken the test, thus leading me to think that it would be okay to give this information in front of her and my mother. That is where the fuck up happened. She had not taken the test yet. As I am writing this I can hear yelling from the living room which contains the sentences of I don't want TO take it and don't push it, I don't want it TO get stuck. I am expecting to get yelled at in a second because of this. If I do not respond, I am probably dead. TLDR told my sister that the cotton from COVID tests can get stuck in your nose.
TIFU by not telling our neighbors my fiancé passed his driving test.
Obligatory. This did not happen today. FU was discovered yesterday, but I guess happened a couple of weeks back. My fiancé and I live in one section of a large Edwardian house that is divided into 3 houses. The middle house is occupied by our landlady, who rents out both the houses on either side. I get along well with our landlady but have never met the neighbors on the other side of her, as they only moved in a couple of months ago. My landlady knows I drive and knows what my car looks like, and knows that my fiancé doesn't drive, because they've had a good moan together about having to rely on public transport before. On 20th December, my fiancé passed his driving test, and immediately he got a car from his sister, who had bought a new car and wanted to get rid of her old one. We picked it up and parked it outside our house without thinking anything of it. On the 22nd, we went to stay with family and didn't return until late on the 2nd of January. We decided to take my car since it was slightly larger and easier to drive. We did not think what it would look like to our neighbors, having a car dumped outside their house, and left. When we awoke and went outside on the 3rd, we found a note in my fiancé's car. It said that as the car had been left stationary for 2 weeks, it was assumed to be abandoned, and if nothing was heard by the 4th, the council would be contacted to have it towed. Immediately we panicked. There was no name or address on the note, but we tried knocking on both other doors in our 3-part house and got no response. My fiancé was in a state. This was not how he expected to start his life as a driver, but I stayed calm and texted our landlady. She was away with family, but she said that she and our other neighbor had been concerned about the car. They knew my fiancé didn't drive, that it wasn't my car, and they had asked all our other neighbors and nobody claimed the car. They had even called the police to find out if it was stolen. They came to the conclusion that it was abandoned and left the note. My landlady said she wasn't sure if our other neighbor had called the council yet, and we should try to get in touch with her. We spent the afternoon banging on our neighbor's door at intervals and got no response. I eventually got her number from my landlady, and sent her a text, while my fiancé put a note through her door. It got to about 5 p.m. on the 3rd, and we were getting extremely worried when our neighbor knocked on our door. She explained she was hard of hearing and had not heard our knocking. She apologized profusely for worrying us and reassured us that she hadn't contacted the council yet, and obviously wouldn't know she knew the car was ours. So we managed to avoid complete disaster, but it was a stressful few hours that could have been completely avoided if I just told my landlady that my fiancé had passed his driving test and got a car. TLDR, I didn't tell my neighbors that my fiancé passed his driving test and got a car. We left his new car outside the house for 2 weeks while visiting family. Neighbors assumed the car was dumped and abandoned and were on the verge of calling the council to get it towed.
TIFU by giving mom my old phone and not logging out of my socials.
So I gave my mom my old iPhone last Christmas and totally forgot that I used that phone for a while for my sexploration life. Therefore, I got my alter on TW logged in there, my Messenger and TG account. Now, the day before I gave my mom my phone, I had sex with my man. It was my first time, and told my friends the next day, and that day was the day I gave my mom my old phone without resetting it. Fork it. Worst, I realized what I did the next day, too fucking late, honestly wanted to die. And my mom's pretty nosy, bet she already read our chats, between me and my friends, and how I vividly told them how I lost my virginity woozy face. And bet she also saw what I was up to on Twitter. Great. Needless to say, it was awkward when I asked my mom my phone back so I could reset it for her. Context, my parents are Christian, and I went to a Christian private school. So you know what my environment is. TLDR, gave my mom my old phone without resetting it and got my Messenger connected where I told my friends how I lost my virginity.
TIFU by searching my local mall for a salt lamp.
Obligatory preface: this wasn't exactly a TIFU. This actually happened in 2018 when I was a young teen. However, I was reminded of it today and I totally had to post it here. So, set the scene back 4 years. At this point in time, my best friend, who I'll pseudo-name Eve for purposes of this story, and I had known each other for around 5 years, and I spent a lot of time with her family, especially her mom and little sister. So when Eve's mom reached out to me, asking if I could help with Eve's younger sister's birthday party, I was thrilled. Of course, I said yes. Fast forward to the day of the party. My mom drops me off at Eve's place and she and I hang out for a bit before her mom comes down to tell us it's time to leave. On the car ride there, Eve's mom introduces me to 3 of Sis's friends and explains that Eve and I will be chaperoning a team of 2 younger girls each on a scavenger hunt around the mall. Our job is to help the girls find each item and then text her photos of our group with each item of the scavenger hunt, as they didn't have cell phones of their own yet. Brilliant. I love a good chaotic scramble through the mall. There is but one itty-bitty hiccup with our game plan. One teensy detail, so small that I didn't even think about it until it came back swinging. See, I have, and have always had, a god-awful navigational sense. I'm that gal who gets lost in her own neighborhood on a regular basis. I once went Christmas shopping with a different friend and literally drove into the parking lot before realizing I had driven us to the wrong mall. My most famous story, and the main reason I'm not allowed to go anywhere without Apple Maps anymore, is when I got turned around on my way back from the bathroom and ended up in the wrong movie theater for an hour or so. But hey, I've been going to this mall since I was like 4. I know all the shops, I know my way around. No worries cross my mind as I head out with the birthday girl and her companion. The first 45 minutes or so go great. We make our way down the list. I take a bunch of cute pics of the girls together. We get distracted by cheap earrings and fake nails. All is good in our baby teen and preteen worlds. That is until we run into one of the last few items on our list. It's a salt lamp. No biggie, I think. There's this adorable little Asian garden store that I know sells them along with their indoor fountains and bamboo plants. Except, wait. The store wasn't where I thought it was. In fact, it doesn't seem to be anywhere. Lil Sis, her friend, and I make our way from end to end of the mall. Slowly, we check off everything on our list except the salt lamp. We've now crossed the entire mall twice and the girls are getting stressed that we'll lose because we can't find the stupid lamp. That's when I have a brilliant idea. See, our mall had a bunch of hanging screens that would change to show off different features of the mall or ads for its various stores. I glanced up and happened to see a number displayed on the screen, along with the text, "Can't find what you're looking for? Text 123 456, insert number here for help." Our savior. I stop the girls for a second, copy down the number, and start texting. The first person I contact comes up with a few vague suggestions. Not very helpful, so I try the number again. Finally, this new person, who for some reason is ingrained in my memory as James, suggests the store Spencer's. I've never heard of it, so James very kindly gives me directions to the store. Eventually, I leave my charges to the store and we go. However, we don't see salt lamps. We wander deeper and deeper into the store until I see the telltale glow of the accursed hunk of luminous sodium. Hallelujah! I give Lil Sis and companion the display lamp to hold and tell them to pose for a picture. I back up a little bit and focus on my phone camera to get the optimal photo. And then I see it. It's at this point that I should clarify something for non-Americans. See, Spencer's is this kind of alt store. They sell a lot of jewelry, a lot of goth clothing and anime merchandise, and a lot of pagan/witchy stuff. However, they're especially well known for their back wall, which is famously lined with adult products. I, being a very young teen who had barely realized that passionate hugging wasn't just a medical thing, had absolutely no idea until the moment I went to take the picture and spotted a row of back massagers behind my completely oblivious charges. I froze. The girls absolutely saw the look on my face and started to ask me what was wrong. I sputtered out some total BS and herded them out as quickly as possible, inserting myself between them and the wall as soon as they were past me. Thankfully, they never turned around and never took a close enough look at the wall to notice. However, that was the only photo I got of them with a salt lamp, and I couldn't make them go find another without telling them why. So I was stuck with the alternative, which was explaining in a series of apology-studded texts to Eve's mom why there was a wall of personal massagers and maid costumes in the background of said picture. Thankfully, Mama E found it hysterical, and to this day she and I still joke about it occasionally. In fact, texting her the picture is what inspired me to write this post in the first place. Oh yeah, and the little garden store was, and is, still exactly where it's always been. TLDR, got lost in a mall I'd been going to my entire life and somehow ended up way too deep in Spencer's. I was just looking for a salt lamp.
TIFU by declaring someone's elderly neighbor deceased while he wasn't.
Mandatory. This didn't happen today, but around 5 years ago. It was my second day at my new job. I worked for the local municipal health service at the call center for the COVID-19 department. My job consisted of calling people in the area to inform them that they tested positive for COVID, and then explaining the isolation/quarantine regulations to them and their housemates/contacts. It was a very interesting job, and I have had many memorable, good and bad, conversations with many different people, but this story definitely takes the cake. On my second day of training, I had one of my first calls together with other new colleagues. The lab results stated that the person who tested positive for COVID was an 87-year-old man, and that he resided in the emergency department of a local hospital. Let's call him Mr. Doe. I felt a lump in my throat thinking about this man. I really did not feel like calling an elderly man residing in the emergency department, who is a very high-risk person in terms of COVID, that they are infected with the coronavirus. Unfortunately, it was part of the job. The lab results always provide a phone number to call in these cases. Usually, it's the patient themselves, but sometimes it's a caregiver or other close contact. I called the number and hoped for the best. They picked up and I heard an elderly man on the other side. I started the standard procedure that goes as follows. Good afternoon, my name is Lasagna Bowling from the Municipal Health Service. Am I speaking with Mr. Doe? No, you're speaking with his neighbor. Mr. Doe was my neighbor. Wait for what? I immediately started panicking. Oh no, he was your neighbor? I asked nervously. Yes, unintelligible. Deceased, unintelligible. I couldn't comprehend much of what he was saying. The elderly in the area usually talk with a pretty strong dialect, but I immediately concluded that Mr. Doe must have passed away in the interval between the COVID test and my phone call. Regarding his age and the fact that the lab results were mailed from the hospital, this wasn't too surprising. Fuck, what am I supposed to do now? This is one of my first calls ever, and I am already confronted with a poor man's bereavement. Panicky, I say something along the lines of, I am so sorry, sir, my deepest condolences. I wasn't aware that he had passed away already. Well, I guess this call can be considered unnecessary. Again, I am so sorry for your loss. I end the call, and I look at my new colleagues in shock. One experienced colleague tries to console me by telling me that this can happen sometimes, and that it is not my fault. This makes me feel a bit better until another puzzled colleague asks me. Hold on, I thought his tone of voice sounded questioning, not confirmatory. Didn't he just ask you whether his neighbor has passed away? Oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no. I realize I didn't even properly hear what the man said on the phone. I only assumed that Mr. Doe had already passed away. At this point, I also realized that he did say deceased, but hearing this word immediately made me panic, so I didn't listen closely anymore. Fuck, now I have to call the hospital to verify whether Mr. Doe has actually died or is still alive, which is already very embarrassing to ask, let alone the current context. I immediately call the hospital where Mr. Doe resides, and we ask what the state is of Mr. Doe. A friendly hospital staff member tells us the thing I was dreading to hear: Mr. Doe is in the emergency department right now and is alive. I was so embarrassed that I considered changing my identity and moving halfway across the world. Jesus Christ, how could I fuck up so badly on my second day at my new job? I had to call back his poor old neighbor to inform him that his neighbor is actually still alive. Which is relieving news for him to hear, I hope, but goddamn. I think I ruined this man's whole day. I dial his phone number again and nervously wait for him to pick up. Hi, you're speaking to Lazan Bowling from the Municipal Health Service again. I called you a few minutes ago with sad news, but I am urgently calling you back to tell you that Mr. Doe is in fact still alive in the hospital. I am deeply sorry for this misunderstanding. I don't know how this happened. The neighbor sounds shocked but relieved when he says, at least it's better news than the other way around, right? I was so relieved to know that this man wasn't pissed at me for declaring his neighbor dead, only to call him back 15 minutes later to say the opposite. After this call was over, I was afraid that I was going to lose my job for assuming someone had passed away and declaring him deceased to his elderly neighbor. Fortunately, my supervisor was very forgiving of the situation and told me that I solved it well, but she advised me to not immediately assume something without verifying it next time. TLDR, I called this poor old man in name of the government to declare his elderly neighbor, who resided at the ER and was tested positive for COVID-19, deceased. Turned out it was only a miscommunication between me and the old man, that his elderly neighbor was in fact still alive, resulting in the most embarrassing follow-up call I never thought I would have to make in my entire life.
TIFU by busting a side view mirror.
So today was my first time driving in France, and I messed up pretty bad. I'm an Indian student who's been driving in India for around 5 years, and trust me, the streets are probably the craziest in the world. So being the cocky bastard I am, I decided to just give it a shot here, despite it being the literal opposite direction, with everything different: pedals, traffic, rules. Hell, India had almost no rules. My driving test was just to go around an 8-shaped road once and I had my license. Anyhow, yesterday night I got zero sleep, first trip in Europe, driving after a long time. I love driving BTW, and watching videos on WTF parallel parking is. I also spent a few hours memorizing road signs. Good to go, right? Hell no. Today morning, I go get the car I rented, and it's a pretty old model, but everything works. I back it out and begin driving, but it was so disorienting. I kept reaching for the gears on the left, but it isn't there. I was panicking and my heart was in my throat. I forgot to put on the seat belt or turn on the radiator to clear up the foggy windows. My brain was an absolute shit show. After driving around 1 to 2 kilometers, I realized I hadn't even turned on my headlights. It was just the park lights that were on. The worst part was that I realized this when I got on the highway. I had never been more scared in my life. Indian roads might be crazy, but I'd never seen so many cars going so damn fast. Like, how do you get into that flow? That was when I realized I had well and truly fucked up. I got out of the highway somehow, despite missing an exit. Switching lanes on highways was new to me, and parked the car and went over all the buttons and switches, cause at one point I didn't even remember which side worked which direction on the indicator. The breather helped, and after that, it was much smoother, although I kept straying towards the left on the road. When I was really close to where my friends were waiting for me, is when I destroyed this poor old dad's side view mirror. He was getting out to drop his kids off and the road was pretty narrow, and I drove a little too close and bam. I speak intermediate French, and this guy spoke broken English so I could communicate and calm him down, assuring him that I'll pay. Insurance would require a police complaint and all, and I didn't want that really. We were talking after he taped up his mirror and another car smashes it. I nearly died, watching him scream curses as this other car whipped past without stopping. I thought he'd take it out on me. Unfortunately, this car had electronically controllable mirrors and I ended up having to pay a month's rent, after having to borrow from my friends who I just notified that the trip was cancelled. I drove back with them to return the car I rented, earlier than planned. I am now extra broke and want to die. TLDR, I was overconfident and rented a car in a new country where I had nothing about the rules and a different traffic direction, then smashed a stranger's car and ended up paying a month's rent.
TIFU by saying I love you to my FWB.
So very early into quarantine in 2020, I matched with a girl. We really hit it off. Both of us had some very similar uncommon life experiences growing up and more importantly found we had a lot of similar kink interests. She'd finished a really messy breakup right before COVID hit, and was really adamant about never wanting a serious committed relationship again, just being free to be a slut, her words not mine. I'm terminally afraid of commitment, so that was fine with me. We chatted for a few weeks before the sexting and FaceTiming finally broke us down, and we violated our respective quarantines and each other's bodies. We both lived alone and worked from home, and were isolated from pretty much anyone else, so it was just honestly nice to have someone to interact with. It turned into a pretty regular thing, though she was very upfront about seeing other guys, which I was fine with. Regular you up, texts from both of us to the other, lots of sexting. Occasional actual date nights. We even did a couple of weekend getaways when quarantine rules loosened up. A couple of months ago I slept over at her Airbnb. Her condo had some work being done, which I don't typically do because her bed at home is too small. She's a heavy sleeper and not a morning person, so I end up making breakfast just for something to do while she sleeps. The smell of bacon finally awakened her, and she collapsed on the couch to eat. Unfortunately, the couch was the only place to sit in the Airbnb. It wasn't super nice, there wasn't even a table. She told me to eat on the floor, and I jokingly said I love you, but I'm not eating off the floor. There was kind of an awkward pregnant pause as we both took in what we said. I should have just laughed it off, because I didn't at all mean it in that way. I was just not awake yet and jumbled my words. Instead, I just ignored it and babbled on about something else. I don't remember what. We went out a couple of times since then, but all of my sexts or physical advances have basically gone nowhere. She'll just ignore the texts until I say change the topic. Have dropped a couple of hints to invite me to see her remodeled place, and no invites. Haven't seen her in person in over a month and a half. So lost out on the hottest and freakiest girl I've ever known because I'm an idiot. TLDR said I love you to a friends with benefits in a non-meaningful way. Now we're not smashing.